Second heading was really just to demonstrate the stuff we learned yesterday. I don't really need to keep that around. I'm going to get rid of it. It's kind of silly. Third part of the homework was to make a form. That instead of just changing it to a string that we hard-coded in there, changes it to something that we type into a form field. So let's make a form. I'm going to get rid of this button for now, too. So now we just have the H1. What's a form element in HTML? You'll never guess. It's form. Did I talk about emit yesterday? Did I talk about how to expand those things to get the opening and closing tag? I did. Okay, yeah. I have my keyboard shortcut set to something other than tab. I have it set to control spacebar for emit expansion because there are a lot of other extensions I have installed that want to do tab completion as well. We don't need an action attribute on this thing because it's not actually submitting anywhere. So let's make a form. Inside the form, we put an input. It used to be part of the HTML standard that form inputs have to be inside another element inside the form. I think they may have changed that with HTML5, but I'm still in the habit of doing that, so I'm going to do it. So I'm going to put a paragraph in here, and inside the paragraph, I'm going to put an input. And see what I mean? There you go. So inputs have a type. Text is the default, but we're going to explicitly say type equals text. We're going to go ahead and give our input a name as well so that we can refer to it later. Name equals, and I'm going to make this say the person's name. This is a user directory, so this is going to be username. I'm going to camel case it like that, lowercase u, capital N. If you're consistent about how you name things, it makes it a lot easier to remember when you need to refer to them later. And JavaScript is case sensitive. So we'll give it a name of username. Now, of course, when you look at that, you have no idea that that's supposed to be a name. It is unlabeled. Also, of course, our JavaScript's throwing errors now because we deleted all the stuff it's looking for. So how about we label this rascal? There happens to be an element called label. With an attribute called for. That tells you which form field it is labeling. So you refer to the name of the input. So username. Label for username. And then the contents of the label are what will actually display on the page. So that's where you put what you want to actually show up in between the opening and closing tags. So I'll just say name. The reason I didn't just say name down here is because I wanted to make it clear that it doesn't matter that it's the same as the attribute name, the value name. The value is something totally different, something that you assign. Name is the name of the attribute. What you put here is up to you. It could have been just name, but I wanted to use something other than that. So let's have a look. So what's the point of for? Anybody know? If I took it out, it would look the same. What's the point? Anybody know why I did that? It does, but under what circumstances does that matter for the label? Yes, but it'll still look the same even if you have more than one. So it's partially for accessibility. If people are using assistive technologies like screen readers, when they tab, because they can't use a mouse, you use a tab to get from field to field. When they tab into that field, it'll know which label goes with it, so it can read to them which field they're in. Without that for, it wouldn't know how to do that. Similarly, for things like checkboxes, even when you are using a mouse or a trackpad, when you click on the label, it will actually uncheck and check the checkbox. You don't have to actually check on that little tiny checkbox. You can check the label next to it as long as you do this. There's another way to do this, which is to actually, you can omit the for, the input inside the contents of the label. You can do that too. Both work fine. So now we have a label. We should probably have a button too. So inside the form this time, I'm going to put a button. Buttons can have types. If we give a button a type of submit, then what that button will do is submit the form when it's clicked. So that basically gives it a default action. So we'll make this button of type submit. And I will just put go in there as the text of my button. Okay, there it is. Doesn't look like much, but it's got it where it counts. So we made the form, but the form doesn't do anything yet. So all this JavaScript is no good now. We could still grab the button and do an onClick. But I don't want to do that because, as we saw, if you hit enter while you have the form field focus, which is totally what you'll do to submit a form, at least I do. I don't take my hand off the keyboard just to go down and click a submit button. I hit enter. And that doesn't work because we weren't listening for that. We were listening for a button being clicked. But there's another event called submit, and we can listen for that to happen. So we're not listening for the button to be clicked. We're listening for the form to be submitted. Now, if the button is clicked, since it is of type submit, that will trigger the submit event. So that will still work. But it'll also work if you hit enter, which, again, if you're using assistive technology, you don't click the dang button. You just hit enter. So let's try to do this a little differently. So it's not a button being clicked. It's a form being submitted. So what element do we want to add the event listener to? The form. So how do we grab that? We don't have the form yet, though. Document.querySelector. The string form. We could have also given the form an ID. Let's go ahead and do that, just in case we have more than one form on the page later. Form ID equals, I'll call it user form, like that. Camel cased. So then we could either say form hash user form, or we could just say hash user form, whichever you like. Now we need to save that somewhere so we can do stuff to it. Const form equals document.querySelector form hash user form. And then, Pooja, you were saying?
Then you would do
form.add event listener. What are we listening for? Not a click this time. Submit. Submit is a real event that we can listen for. And it needs to do something, but we haven't written that part yet, right? So let's write that part. So for the moment, I'm going to comment out this line so we don't have an error. Trick in most text editors, command / or control / will comment out the highlighted lines. Or if you just have your cursor on a line, it can be anywhere on the line. It will comment it or uncomment it. Comments in JavaScript, 2 /, just like C++. Or you can also do C-style comments, which are // /*/. And those are block level comments that you can do on multiple lines. I recommend, however, doing single line comments. If you need to comment out multiple lines, just highlight multiple lines and use the keyboard shortcut, because there are some issues with the other style of comment. Yeah?
Why do you have to call that after submit?
Because something else goes there, right? That's where we need to put the function, but it's not there yet. So it is because of that comma that I commented out the line, because it's invalid right now, right? That comma doesn't belong there yet. So that's why I'm commenting it out. Yeah. Good question. Hey, let's see what the error is, though, shall we? Let's refresh the page. Uncaught type error. Failed to execute add event listener on event target. 2 arguments required, but only 1 present. Now, we learned yesterday JavaScript does not enforce this thing, so they're actually going out of their way to do this error, because generally speaking, it does not enforce the number of arguments. But you could write your function in such a way that it does check the number of arguments, but you have to do that work yourself. And they did do that work for this one. So that's the error we get. So we'll comment it out for now, and we'll make our function. And we'll do it variable style, const. I'll call it handle submit. My rule for naming methods is they should be verbs. Since they do things, you should say what they do. In this case, it handles the submit. It might change the heading too, but we could also write the part that actually changes the heading as a separate function that gets called by handling the submit. This thing is just handling the event. So handle submit equals a function. We learned yesterday that function will receive an event as an argument, whether we ask for it or not. We'll go ahead and put it in the argument list to remind ourselves that it's there. And then what do we want to do? We'll still just change the heading for now. Isn't that what it was supposed to do? So we need to grab the heading. So const heading equals document.querySelector, the string h1. And we want to change its text content, right? Heading dot text content equals what? How do we get the value of that input? People who did it, how did you do it? Get the input and then get the value of the input. So you could say something like const input equals like this using query selector. Yeah. So query selector, there's only 1 on the page right now, so that would work. And then you can set it to input.value. So text inputs have a value attribute, a value property that gives you what's typed in them. So does it work? How about we uncomment this line and actually put the function in there? Handle submit. So add event listener. Submit is the event we're listening for. Handle submit is the thing we want to run. Again, don't put open close parentheses there. Yes, I know I've said it a million times, but you'll probably at least briefly make that mistake and not remember why it doesn't work. So it's something to check. So we'll refresh the page. We'll type something in here. Will he is. I'm going to hit enter. Watch carefully. Did you see it? It happened, right? It happened and then it immediately went away. Aw, shucks. This is why everyone did an on-click last night, because this is what happens if you don't. It does it, by golly. And then it refreshes the page. Why? Because the form submitted. And we didn't tell the form where to submit, so it just submitted to itself, which refreshes the page. Clicking on a button that isn't a submit button doesn't do anything automatically. You have to tell it what to do. But submitting a form has a default action in the browser. It's going to do something without you going out of your way to add a submit handler. So since we did add a submit handler, we needed to tell it to stop doing the thing that it wants to do. So let's figure out how we can do that. We know that handle submit did run. We saw it run. But then bad stuff happened. So since it at least got called, I'm going to go ahead and throw a breakpoint in here. Throw the debugger inside the function so that when that line of code, when line 4 is executed, it will pause execution and give me control inside the browser. So refresh the page. Let's do it again. Will he still is. Submit. I am paused. Here's the line where I'm paused. I'm on the sources tab right now. That's where it does this. It'll show you things like what your local variables are. So heading and input are going to be defined here in a minute, but right now they're undefined. This is the form. I don't know about all this. We're going to learn all about this, though, in the next couple of days. You're going to wish you'd never been born. I mean, you're going to be so happy to learn a new thing. That's what I meant to say. So if we go to the console, we are on line 4. So EV, for example, will be in scope. So I can say EV, and I get my event. Let's look at this event. We learned about event target yesterday, right? Event target is the form. Yesterday it was the button. What's the difference? It is always the thing on which the event occurred. Even if you clicked the button right now, it wasn't the clicking that triggered the event handler, right? It was the submission of the form because that's what we were listening for. So the target is going to be the form itself. What else we have here? Default prevented, false. That sounds like the thing we're interested in, right? We want that to be true. There is a default behavior associated with submitting a form, and we don't want it to happen because that's ruining our day. Well, it turns out events have a method on them called prevent default. If I hit enter right now, we'll see that is a function. If we run that function using open close parens, and then we unpause our debugger, it changes it and it does not refresh the page. So this is what we want to do. So first thing inside our event handler, take out the debugger. I want to use this event object that was passed in. ev.prevent default. Open close parens. And that will stop the form from actually submitting, and we'll just run our function to handle it. Let's refresh the page and confirm that that worked. Is that how you spell Maximilian? Is that it?
There's one L.
One L. I suspected so. Maximilian. Oh, look at that. It works. Go us. Confirm that it works with clicking the button too, since I'm being lazy and hitting enter every time. Samantha, you go by Sam, right? Sam. I didn't do it. I still hit enter. I just can't help myself. Grace, under fire. Click. Hey, it works. Hot diggity. Go us. Super mega bonus credit. Let's do a get status real quick. I have changed both the HTML and the JS. Just in case I didn't remember, well, what did I change in the HTML? I could type git diff, and that will show me the difference between the stuff I haven't committed yet and what I have committed. So I see, okay, I removed this line. That's what the red and the minus mean. I added these lines. I removed this line. I added these lines. Cool. Hit Q to get out of this. And let's commit. I hadn't added yet, have I? Git add dot git commit dash m. And I'm going to write an imperative sentence here. Update the heading with the value from the form. And push.